What other kind of trips do you remember we did together?
Oh, let's see. I remember where we rode. The most commonly rode at Rottenwood Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
Yep. I remember. I remember. I don't know if y'all weren't with me, but I got 2 tickets on a motorcycle. One was going down Spring Road with. We went to school with a boy. He had his brother's Triumph, and I was on my brother's 305. And Rudisell stopped us and gave us both a ticket.
Rudisell, there's a name I hadn't heard in a while.
Right. The second time, y'all weren't there, but I was tuning a 305 Yamaha Twin. It was a ragged-looking thing, and this is when I think very clear in emergencies. But anyway, I was tuning that thing up. It was packed together, and I went down South Cobb Drive, and I opened that thing up, and golly, those little old twin 350s, they were fast.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, there was a cop behind me, and I was in grubby clothes. I had grease all over me and stuff like that. And I pulled over, and I held the throttle wide open, and I started kicking the bike. And I was kicking it. And the cops was out. They had their guns drawn and their eyes wide open. It was like, what the heck? And I kicked it, and I kind of quietly let loose the throttle, and I said, "Whew, boy, that was close." They said, "What in the world's wrong?" I said, "I'm sorry, sir. I was testing this bike, and the throttle's stuck open." They said, "Where do you live?" And I told them it was down the street. It was near where David's house. They said, "Get that damn thing home."
Oh. Well, wasn't that payback years later, though, Rick? Wasn't your accident because of a stuck throttle?
Yeah, I can tell you that story. I was tuning my next door, and I should have known better, the Turners, Eddie and Larry. That tells you something right away. But Larry had bought a motocross DT1, and it was a wreck, and I tuned it up, and it just needed carburetor tune. And I was out back checking it, and I just kind of blipped the throttle, and the throttle just went wide open, and the bike just spiraled backwards did about 3 backflips, and I fell on my knee, and of course that's had surgery. And days later I took it apart, and if y'all remember, those Yamahas, well, all the 2-strokes had a oil injection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To make it motocross, you took the oil injection off. So Larry, had a cable run from the carburetor over to the oil injector. Instead of taking it off, he just clipped at the carburetor, just clipped the cable. So that piece of cable was stuck in the carburetor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the Turner boys.
I remember that well. We were fortunate to kind of grow up with the industry. I mean, if you were starting today getting on a 175 Honda, people would laugh at you,
Linda and I guess we were going from Rottenwood Creek. She's on the back of my 175, and we're going down I-285 again. Now, does that sound absolutely crazy?
Yes, it does. My favorite time was being stuck in Rottenwood Creek with the mosquitoes, thanks to Mike. Mike, you want to recount that one?
Well, that was when I got the 350 Motorsport.
SL 350. Yeah.
It wasn't worth a darn for trail riding, I tell you the truth, but it was a nice road. It looked good out on the road.
Yeah, it really was.
It went pretty fast, and David and I was riding over at Rottenwood Creek, and I ran off of I didn't see it, but I ran off somehow and kept the motorcycle upright, but I ran off into the creek and ended up in the creek, and the motorcycle was dead and wouldn't crank for love nor money. So I said, well, I can go get my Jeep and haul it home. but I'll need to borrow your motorcycle, David. So David loaned me his motorcycle, and he sat out there in the mosquitoes in the creek with my motorcycle, and we got it loaded up and got it home on the trailer and everything. And Dad came walking out. You know how he swaggered back and forth when we were trying to walk him. He said, "What's the matter with your motorcycle?" And I said, "Well, it won't crank for some reason." He said, "Well, it's a new motorcycle and all the crank." And so he got to looking at it. He said, "What does this button do?" The kill switch. So we turned the kill switch off, and it cranked right up.
I was covered in bites.
If David hadn't been such a good guy, he killed me right there in front of my parents.
The other funny thing about that story too is, when we were riding there, I lost track of Mike and couldn't see where he was. And I stopped and shut the motor off and didn't hear anything. I said, "Mike, yeah, where are you?" "I'm over here." "Where's here?" He said, "Down here." And there he was in the creek. Oh, Lord.
Mike, if you'd have kept that SL 350, those things are hot. They're a hot commodity right now.
Well, I could have. What was really hot was my helmet, my orange helmet I had on. Looked like I had a big balloon on my head. Of course, that's what I get from having an oblong, odd-shaped head. I couldn't wear one.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that. Hey, you guys remember what our the official riding gear back then was?
Well, I got pictures, but what do you remember?
A blue jean jacket.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And one of this fancy stuff that you wear nowadays. It was a blue jean jacket. That was pretty much it. Didn't matter if it was 18 degrees outside or what it is.
Yeah, so there's a lot. But yeah, I got rid of my 175. I sold it to my neighbor, and he pretty much destroyed it the first day he had it. And that's when I moved into two strokes and got the CT1. Really liked that bike. So Mike being Mike, he said, "Well, I can go you one better." So he bought an RT1. Right, Mike?
Yeah.
Oh, the
piece of 360 piece of junk.
Yeah, and then David bought it and lost money on it. So,
we both lost money on that bike.
Well, like I said, I still think that at that time, the 175 was the perfect size bike.
Yep.
Got any bigger than that OSA was just too big. And of course, an RT was a monster.
Yeah. I had a friend that had a Penton and rode that one time. It was the same way. You couldn't keep the front wheel on the ground on that thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Brooks Smalley's brother bought remember these Hodakas?
Yeah.
There's a Hodaka Scat Pack or something. It was a full on race. And it's the same way, little 150, 125. And raise up. I mean, that's all you could do. Keep the front end down.
Let's see. Was that the Wombat?
The Wombat. Combat
Wombat, yeah. Mm-hmm. Remember that? I also had a neighbor that had a Bridgestone 100, if you remember those with the rotary gear shift on it. Yeah. And they blew up more motors than that thing on first, second, third, fourth, first.
Oh.
Because it didn't stop there, Let's see, what else we got going on here?
And before we get to honoring David too much for his honesty, he did this. I do remember him finding out that as he was selling his motorcycle and he was cleaning it up, and he noticed that he had broken the bottom of it, basically the whole. I forget what it is. A big chunk that was just cracked and was within a few more miles of falling off. And he went ahead and sold his motorcycle, though. I guess it finally came apart on him. You remember that, David?
Which motorcycle was it, Mike?
I think it was a 175.
I'm not lying to you. I vaguely remember that, but was it the center stand mount or something on it?
It was a center stand mount.
That's okay. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. Well, what can I tell you? My neighbor was a jerk anyway. So.
I mean, you'd already made the deal. You just cleaned it up for him, and.
Well, he destroyed it over the next week anyway, so I didn't feel real bad about it.
Yeah, I remember your neighbor. That's right. Mm-hmm.
So, okay, Rick, you went through started off with the scooter, went to your brother's 305, then the 160. You had the OSA. Oh, you had the CT1 also, right?
Yeah, the CT1.
And then later on, you moved on to did you just do Nortons or Triumphs or both?
I got out of it because of that, and had kids and stuff like that. And then when the kids basically got out, went to college and stuff, I had a friend at work that was restored the little Triumph Cubs, and they look pretty. Those British bikes always had a good look.
Mm-hmm.
And, I decided I'd just try to restore one myself, and I bought a Triumph Bonneville, a 1966 Triumph Bonneville, and just had a real good time restoring that, and finally restored about 4 more Triumphs and my Norton, my 74 Norton, and really enjoyed those things. And got rid of that 66 Triumph just 2 years ago, I think. But that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, you made some comment that couldn't kickstart it anymore.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And let's see, Mike, let's review your motorcycle history. Of course, the 160 to start with. Did you go right to the RT one after that?
I went to the RC. Yeah, I went to the Honda after that.
Oh, that's right, the SL. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was living in Dalton when I bought the Yamaha, and then sold it to you.
Thank you very much.
So, I figured we probably could have put a lot of people in the poorhouse.
Yeah.
And then I ended up with you remember we thought they were big motorcycles back then. The 750s came along.
Yeah, Rick, you should have been involved in that. Here was 3 heterosexual guys with 3 identical 750 Hondas,
Well,
including backrests and crash bars and everything.
That's cute.
I had a different kind of crash bar. I had one that had one more angle in it than we I can remember we was trying to bunch up the 3 of us. There was me and Doug Norton. That's one his first motorcycle and his only motorcycle was a 750.
Right.
Yes.
So he looked like a little kid on that Honda.
But yeah, I enjoyed those 750s. Those were great bikes.
Yeah.
And then after that, Mike, what'd you do?
I went, for years I didn't do anything. And then I went, and for 10 years I had a Gold Wing, a 96 model Gold Wing. Then I bought it. It had the tricycle tires on it.
Yeah.
Where you could mash a button and the tires would come down and hold it up, because the guy I bought it from was older than I was, and he'd had some heart conditions. Doctor told him not to be holding his motorcycle up, so he went to Louisiana somewheres and bought an attachment that would go on, and he could mash a button on it and it'd come down. And the greatest thing I used it for was carrying on and off the motorcycle, because I could put the wheels down and it'd be held up. The only problem with it was that whatever the ground level was is the way it leveled it up. So if you put the wheels down and the ground was a little sloped, it sloped your motorcycle, and I strained the gut trying to hold the motorcycle up a few times. So.
Yeah.